Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. I'm Aisha, your host. Community members recently came together at a Peel District School Board meeting to speak out against a revised prayer policy that required Muslim students to choose from 6 pre-written sermons during Friday prayers. Although this policy was revised, allowing Muslim students to use their own sermons during Friday prayers, the meeting in January caused a lot of debate around Islam itself, leading to intolerance and hate, as quoted by the Peel District School Board Education Director, Tony Pontes. Let's sit down with Dr. Shabir Ally and get his thoughts on engaging in such a dialogue. Welcome to the show, Dr. Shabir.
Nice to be on.
So can we start from the basics? What is Jummah or Friday prayers for Muslims?
The word Jummah simply means Friday. It's a name for the day Friday in Arabic. And usually in a Christian country, Sunday is a holiday, and that is the day that Christians go off to worship in a church. So from a Christian point of view, it may seem strange. Why do Muslims need some kind of special consideration for their prayers? And my God, if we start allowing a different day for everybody to have their prayers, then there will be utter chaos. But for Muslims, there is a special consideration in that Friday is mentioned in the Quran as the day of the prayer. And because for Muslims the Quran is the word of God, it is not within the ambit of Muslims to change it. It's almost like if the Bible said you have to worship on Sunday, then everybody would say, okay, that's what we have to do. We can't change it. In fact, the Bible doesn't say you have to worship on Sunday, but it so happens by Christian convention that this is what they're doing. And so the whole society comes to be shaped like that. Sunday becomes the working holiday. The banks are closed. In traditional societies, the shops were also closed. Things are changing now, but of course, still, there is great facility available for people to worship on that popular day. Now comes Muslims as immigrants into a new land, welcomed as with their religions and their cultures to come in and be as comfortable as everybody else. And of course, that's good for the country because if people are comfortable, they will contribute more to the development and growth of the country. So Muslims in particular have this stipulation in their religion that they must come to the Friday prayer. And usually the Friday prayer is held at midday. Or just a little after midday. So sometimes it is squeezed in during the lunch hour from work, and sometimes, especially in the summer months, after the clock change going back 1 hour, or rather spring forward, it goes forward 1 hour. And then they find themselves having to pray at about 1:30, and that may not necessarily correspond with lunchtime. So Muslims would need a special accommodation either from work or from school to miss an hour while they go out for the prayer.
Couldn't they just compensate and make the prayer up? Make the Friday prayer later?
This would not be a good religious option because it would mean for Muslims who are devout that God has commanded us to do something, and rather than doing precisely what God commanded us, we're just simply doing our own thing. He told us to worship at this time, and we're just doing it at our own time. So maybe some people will choose that option, but for the more devout, it would not be an option.
So, I want to take this conversation to the meeting in January where there is a couple of incidences of hate and, people made some comments. One particular comment that was made by a parent was, Canada is a very diverse country. We have different ethnic cultures, religions, etc. So if we start making accommodations for Muslims to have time for prayer, what about if all other ethnic groups start coming and saying that? And this parent specifically said, there are only 5 learning days. So how is this going to work? What would you say to that?
Yeah, well, that argument is based on a logical fallacy where somebody says, if everybody claims this, then what would be the situation? It's almost like asking if everybody claims welfare, well, how can the country support everybody in welfare? But the fact is that not everybody will apply for welfare, for social assistance. Most people will work, and it is only the few unfortunate who require that help that will apply for it. So in a similar way, the Muslims have this special consideration that they have to pray on a Friday. Having studied the world's religions, I'm not aware that other religions have such stringent requirements that they must pray at specific times. In fact, if anyone has observed an observant Muslim, one will realize that the observant Muslim prays regularly, not only on a Friday, but on other days of the week as well. every day. Usually a Muslim would pray 5 times a day, scattered throughout the 24 hours. And what is the midday prayer on other days becomes the Friday prayer on a Friday. And whereas the other prayers on other days can easily be squeezed into a lunch break or into a coffee break in the afternoon, the Friday prayer involves the sermon, and it's meant to be a congregational prayer. So you can't just simply pray it alone. If you happen to be working and you're the only one in your office, you can't pray it alone. You have to come and join a gathering to offer this prayer. And because of the sermon and the traveling time, it then cuts into a little bit of time there. So, but other religions would not be claiming this. I can't imagine that somebody else saying, okay, I also have a Friday prayer, because they don't, or a Thursday or a Wednesday prayer, because they don't.
And for Muslim students, specifically in schools who are asking for accommodation, things like travel and that kind of thing is already taken out of the mix. So it's a certain amount of time that's also limited that they need, right?
Yes, and this is why some workplaces will actually, if they have a large number of Muslim workers, they will actually arrange a place within, like you can have like Toronto Dominion Bank building, a Royal Bank, or a large such facility with lots of space. They can dedicate a room and say, okay, our employees can pray their Friday prayers here. So that will save the traveling time and take less time away from their time in the office. This is more important in the case of students. Schools are finding that it is more convenient to have a place for the students to pray within the school building, so that that will not only save the traveling time, but it will of course contain the students and lead to less uncertainty about who is going out when and coming back when, and whom do they interact with when they're off the school property. It's just simply safer, it makes more sense, and it contributes better to the children's overall education. They're there at school, they pray quickly, go back to their classes, they do not miss much.
What about the argument that there's no place for religion in public institutions like schools?
This is not the case that the public institution is embracing religion. This is the case that the public institution is making accommodations for those who choose to follow religion. Secularism can go so far as to prohibit religion, but that wouldn't be secularism, that would be anti-religion. If secularism is properly understood, it is the division between church and state. It's leaving everyone to practice their religions if and when they choose to do so in the manner of their own choosing, and the state has no right in dictating how that is to be performed. So in the case of the school is not dictating how, and should not dictate, and this was part of the controversy at the appeal board. Could they intervene and dictate how the Friday sermon could be delivered? And the answer from most is that no, the state does not have any right in that. They could only make an accommodation for the students to have their prayer on campus, so within the school property, in order to facilitate them so that they can actually go back to what the school is there for, to take classes and be in their courses.
How should we deal with some of the incidences that actually happened at that meeting, which, people were screaming things like Islam is poison, Muslim aren't Canadians? How do you, obviously within the context of that meeting, some of the people were escorted out and you had police, but how do we start addressing that? Because it seems like it's going to become, unfortunately, something that we see.
I hope that our discussion here has already started addressing that, because these incidents of hate and bigotry and so on, they stem from a lot of misunderstanding. And if people understand what is the Friday prayer and why Muslims want to have this kind of accommodation, they might be more accommodating. On the other hand, having come this far in our discussion, I want to add that there are good reasons for Muslim leadership to supervise the Friday prayers that are being done either in schools or in other such facilities, especially where the youth are involved. And just as in all subjects you have educators and coaches, in terms of the religion as well, people shouldn't get the idea that anyone can just simply stand up and deliver a sermon to instruct people in religion. One has to have some education, one has to have some learning, and yes, we welcome the students to develop their own skills and craft their own speeches, but we should not shun the opportunity to learn from coaches and teachers and spiritual guides, imams, and of course the Canadian Council of Imams comprises many imams. They can assist students in preparing their sermons and in supervising some of the sermons to the best of their abilities.
So creating a positive and fostering an educational environment for youth to be able to lead the way.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shabir, for clarifying.
You're welcome.
Hey YouTube, we hope you benefited from this video. If you liked it, or if you didn't, let us know in the comments below. And if you're interested in learning more, check out some of our other videos. And don't forget to subscribe so you can get new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.